All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a pretty wild idea that human culture isn't something we built, but maybe it's a new form of life that's actually taken us over. And it all kicks off with a question I bet you've never really thought about.
So what if this alien life form isn't from some distant galaxy, but it's actually from right here on Earth? To even begin to wrap our heads around that, we've got to start with a mystery. And that mystery is us. See, from a purely biological point of view, human beings, we just don't make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, for starters, just take our brains. They're ridiculously large. I mean, a full 600% bigger than they should be for a primate our size. And get this one organ, just sitting there, eats up 20% of our body's energy. And for a kid, that number jumps to an incredible 60%.
Now, here's the thing that's so weird about that. Evolution is supposed to be super efficient. It doesn't waste energy building things just in case. So this enormous, power-hungry brain, it's a huge biological puzzle. It's kind of like installing a nuclear reactor just to power your toaster. It makes no sense.
And the puzzles don't stop there. They just keep piling up. I mean, why do humans do things that are basically genetic suicide, like choosing celibacy or martyrdom? And where did this incredibly complex instinct for language come from? It seems to have just appeared out of nowhere. The bottom line is, when you try to explain us using the standard rules of evolution, we're like a square peg in a round hole. We just don't fit.
So, to crack this puzzle, we have to take a step back. We need to look at the one fundamental law that governs all life. And I don't just mean life on Earth, I mean life anywhere in the universe.
Way back in 1859, Charles Darwin stumbled upon this universal algorithm, and it's as real and as fundamental as gravity. It's simple, really. If you have something that can make copies of itself, and those copies aren't always perfect, they have variations, then evolution has to happen. It's inevitable. The copies that just so happen to be better at making more copies will, become more common. That's it. It's just a blind, simple mathematical process.
Here on Earth, the very first things to crack this code were genes. They're the OG replicators. And pretty much all of biology, from the tiniest microbe to the biggest blue whale, and yep, that includes us, is just a really complicated survival machine, a machine built by genes for one single relentless purpose, to make more copies of themselves. But then, something totally new happened, something that had never happened before on this planet. In 1976, the biologist Richard Dawkins came up with this really revolutionary idea. He proposed that a second kind of replicator had emerged, one that followed the exact same Darwinian rules, but played the game on a totally different field.
And he called this new replicator the meme. Now hold on, we've got to be super clear here. We are not talking about a funny picture of a cat on the internet. Dawkins' original idea of a meme is a unit of cultural information. It could be an idea, a melody, a skill, a fashion, a belief. It's basically the cultural version of a gene. Okay, so like any replicator, these new memes needed a place to evolve, a kind of primordial soup. And they found the perfect one, the human brain. So why us? What was so special about our brains? Well, it comes down to a weird little trait we have called over-imitation. Here's how it works. A chimp will watch a person and copy their actions to get a reward, right? But it'll skip any steps that seem useless. A human child, on the other hand, copies everything, even the pointless stuff. And that incredibly precise, high-fidelity copying is what allowed complex ideas, memes, to get passed from brain to brain without being corrupted. It turned our heads into the perfect incubators for them.
And this is where things get really wild. Think of it like the tortoise and the hare. Genes, our first replicator, are the tortoise. They're physical bits of DNA, and they get passed on super slowly over many generations. Memes, well, they're physical too. They are actual neural structures, pathways burned into our brains. But they're the hare. They replicate through language, through imitation, and they can evolve in minutes or hours, not thousands of years. They basically leave genetic evolution coughing in their dust.
Now, the arrival of this second replicator, it wasn't exactly a peaceful transition. It pretty much kicked off an arms race, a kind of coevolution, and sometimes it led to an all-out war for who gets to control the survival machine. And that survival machine is us. I mean, just think about what that means for a second. This brand new replicator started putting its own evolutionary pressure on our species. It started picking winners and losers among humans. Genes that gave us bigger brains, made us better at copying, gave us language, these traits weren't just good for us.
They were selected because they made us better hosts for memes. You could say our own genetic evolution was being hijacked to serve a totally new master.
And a lot of the time, what our genes want and what our memes want are in total conflict, right? Your genes, they have one goal: make as many copies of themselves as possible. So have a bunch of kids. But a really powerful set of memes, say a religious belief in celibacy or a deep philosophical commitment to science, can convince you to have 0 kids. Your genes want you to save energy, but your memes, they might want you to stay up all night arguing about politics online or pour your soul into creating a piece of art.
And this isn't just a small-scale thing. This conflict can happen on a massive, species-altering scale. Genetic analysis has uncovered something totally shocking that happened starting around 7,000 years ago. For something like 2,000 years, only about 5% of men were actually passing on their genes. Think about that. 95% of male genetic lines just stopped. And the most likely culprit wasn't some disease. It was powerful cultural memes, ideas about wealth, power, and social structure that let a tiny group of elites completely monopolize reproduction. The memes were literally rewriting our species' genetic future.
So this new evolutionary force, it didn't just stop at rewiring our brains. Oh no, it went on to take over the entire planet and basically started redesigning it to suit its own needs.
For billions of years, right, genes were the only game in town. They were the architects of Earth. They built the whole biosphere, covering the planet in this beautiful green carpet of life.
But then, the second replicator showed up, and it built a brand new world right on top of the old one. This new world, it's the one you can see from space, the one that glows in the dark. You could call it the memosphere. Our entire civilization, all of it, is just an ecosystem created by memes, for memes, to help them propagate. When you look at it this way, everything we think of as human culture is actually just a really sophisticated strategy for memes to copy themselves. Language? That's just a high-speed data transfer protocol. Art and music? Highly effective, emotionally charged delivery systems. Cities? They're basically just dense server farms, designed to maximize host-to-host transmission. And all our technology, from the printing press all the way to the internet, it's just replication accelerators, built by memes to help themselves spread faster and farther.
So all this leads to a really, really big, and maybe kind of disturbing question. If our bodies are just vehicles for our genes, and our minds are just vehicles for our memes, then where are we in all of this? Who are we? Well, this theory suggests that what we call ourself, our consciousness, our sense of identity, it's not some little pilot sitting in a command center in our skull. It's more of an illusion, an emergent property that's created by the endless competition and collaboration between all the different memes that are fighting for dominance inside our brain. And that really is the biggest takeaway here. We're not just smart apes. We're something else, something completely new. We might just be the first creature on this planet to be a true hybrid, a totally unique, incredibly powerful, and maybe even unstable combination of two different competing replicators, our genes and our memes.
And so we're left with one last kind of unsettling question to chew on. The next time you make a decision or feel this intense passion for an idea, just stop and ask yourself, is that really me talking? Or is it the whisper of a 4 billion-year-old gene? Or is it the voice of a new parasitic idea that's just moved into my brain and is using me to spread? Who is really in control here?